I get to know your name. Well, I can trace your private number, baby. All I know is that's me. You look like an afterlife. Open up your loving arms. I want some. Well, I set my sights on you. No one else to do. I've got to have my way now, baby. All I know is that's me. You look like you're having fun. Open up your loving arms. Watch out here. Right now, you spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. I got to be your friend now, baby. And I would like to move in just a little bit closer. All I know is that's me. You look like me lots of fun. Open up your loving arms. Watch out here. Right now, you spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. All I know is that's me. You look like you got some fun. Open up your loving arms. Watch out here. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round. You spin me right round, baby. Right round like a record, baby. Right round, round, round.
One of Joe's favourites. And if you're anything like me and you remember inflation on a Wednesday night, dancing to that song in about 1983, 82 if you were underage. My name is Alicia Kay, and on behalf of Lee and Joe's sister Sherelle, they thank you so much for your attendance today, and they're extremely grateful and humble that you are here to share with them the life of their beautiful wife and sister, Jo. Before I start, if I could just please remind people to turn off their mobiles, if you haven't already done so. I'm seeing everyone dive for their bag. We're going to start with acknowledgement of country. We welcome you to the Jagjarong country, the land upon which we stand for this service. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and the Indigenous people who have cared for the country we stand on. And we acknowledge the Indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging. Everyone can hear me off the back, can't they? Excellent. To start with, that's too much. To start with, we're going to have some of the symbols that were really important to Jo. These symbolise the passions that she had throughout her life. First, I'm going to ask Lee to come forward. Now, it's killing her to hold the blue scarf, and the blues cap, but she said she'd do it anyway. She has got a little Collingwood doll, though, for the people in the back.
She was a closet Collingwood supporter. And that's from our boys.
So for the benefit of those of you in the back, the two little orange scarves are Disney, what was his name? From Baxter and Ollie. So the two dogs. Ken, if you'd like to come up and place a bowling ball. She loved her bowls and was so happy to be around the bowling club. And of course, it's orange, Joe's favourite colour. And then Sherelle is going to come and place, I thought police memorabilia, but that's a bottle of something. There is a police buckle. So probably not many of you knew Joe was a policewoman, a police person, do I have to call them now? Now I'm going to invite Lily, Josh, Ashton, Darcy, Shay and Shay, Zara, Saska, Chloe and Declan to come forward and light a candle.
On the broken radiator. When you lay them freezing on me, Mama, can you wake me later? I don't really want you to stop, and you know it so it doesn't stop you. You run your hands from my neck to my chest. Crack the shutters open wide, I wanna bathe you in the light of day. And just watch you as the breeze take a look around your face and body. I could sit for hours finding new ways to be on each man. 'Cause the daylight seems to want you just as much as I want you. It's been minutes, it's been days, it's been all I will remember.
We light this flickering flame. It is symbolic of Joe's eternal light. We've only got hold of it for just a brief moment. May it burn as brightly as possible.
I'm marked by my intrepid finger.
So while this music is still playing, you were given a piece of paper at the beginning when you entered, some of you. If you want to take this chance to just write on that piece of paper and just reflect on Joe.
And just watch you as the breeze tangle up around your face and body. I could sit for hours finding new ways to be on each man. 'Cause the daylight seems
If
to
someone has already written their note and they have a pen in their hand, can you just check around you that someone else who doesn't have a pen might need it?
And just watch you as the rays take a look around your face and body. I could sit for hours finding new ways to be on each man. 'Cause the daylight seems to want you just as much as I want you.
So these words that you're writing, they're the words that maybe you were unable to say to Jo before she died. And she's going to carry these words with her. We're going to place them in her coffin with her. And when she is cremated, they will go with her. We're going to collect them at the end of the service. There's going to be some baskets around either at the doors or beside the hearse when we're finished. As we gather today, we do so in sadness and in grief, to pay our final respects and to pay tribute to a woman who has been very special and a very important part of your lives. Today is also a time to reflect, to laugh and to cry, to remember and to celebrate, as together we are going to share the stories of Jo's truly unique life. Yes, it was a life that was taken away far too soon. You didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And even though her death may have ended her physical life, it cannot end the love that you have for her. And even though Jo is no longer with us, you will always have the wonderful gift of her memory to turn to time and time again. I sat with Jo's family, and there were tears and laughter and some amazing stories of a woman that will always be remembered for her beauty and her smile, and of course that wonderful spark that Jo used to have in her eyes. She was always kind towards others. She had a generous nature. She had courage. She had resilience. She had great determination. And there has been so many people that have been affected by her death, as she belonged to so many groups, both here within the community of Daylesford, of Guildford, her new favourite ones, and of Miners Rest, where she lived. And you all knew Jo. You knew she wasn't perfect, but you loved her despite of this, or you would not be here. And throughout the service, I encourage you to express your grief, to try and make sense of it, and to try and take strength from those around you. Her life has left a mark on your own lives, and she will go on being remembered and loved by all of you. So now we're going to hear some stories and see some pictures from the people who loved and knew Jo best. And as you listen to these, you'll learn what made Jo, Jo. Jo laughed and cried. She loved and was loved. And we'll remember the laughter and the tears, the good times and the bad. And you'll get a better understanding of her uniqueness. So first, Steve is going to come up on behalf of Jo's mother, Maureen.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, okay. So my name's Steve. I'm Jo's brother-in-law, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Jo's mum, Maureen, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here today. Joanne Ruby Best was born on the 2nd of April, 1965 at Cabrini Hospital, Malvern. Her parents were myself, Maureen, and Ron, and at this time we were living in Oakley. When Joanne was only 18 months old, we got the devastating news that Ron had a terminal illness and was given only 3 months to live. In fact, Ron lived for a further 6 years with dignity. We lived at this time with my dad, which was a 10-minute walk to Chadstone. Every week we would go to Chaddy, so Joanne got to know the place quite well. She had a fascination with the lifts and loved getting on them. Imagine Christmas Eve, the place was packed. I turned around to find her pusher empty. "Don't move," said the shop assistant. "We'll put it over the speaker." Panic is setting in. How are they going to find her? In a short time, thankfully, she is found. She went down in the lift on her own, and fortunately, one of the under-19 boys that Ron coached had recognised her. She was telling him in little kid speak how she had come down in the lift on her own. This was the start of Joanne's self-confidence. She went to Heather Hill Primary School in Noble Park and loved school, loved her friends and her teachers. A wonderful sports teacher came to the school in grade 5 or 6, and as the school did not have a netball team, she asked if anyone wanted to train and play. Joanne set about training, and the teacher chose the players she wanted. Joanne was lucky to be one of them. They ended up beating all the schools they played against and winning the school's premiership. Joanne was so proud. Like all children, they are a bit reluctant to leave primary school and head off to high school. But Joanne couldn't wait, as most of her friends were going to be with her. Joanne loved school once again and had some really lovely friendships. Some of these friendships remain to this day. In year 11 and 12, she had an assignment to do, which she spent a lot of time on. At some point, she came running out of her room saying, Mum, come and look what's happened. She had a fish tank on her desk, and she had this fish for quite a while, so he had grown quite big. He jumped out of the tank and landed on her assignment, and all the gold from his body with him jumping around had gone everywhere. Assignment ruined. When Joanne's teacher was told of the reason for not handing in the assignment, he said he had never heard of such a stupid story, and a better story would have been the dog ate my assignment. She came home a few days later and told me that he apologised, but asked me, how did he know that I'd told the truth? I told her that I did have the school phone numbers, and by the way, the fish died. The last year of high school, they had a day called Muck-Up Day. When the kids arrived, they did truly the best muck-up day ever. They moved teachers' cars by picking them up and carrying them to different spots. I think the cars were a bit lighter back then. And the usual flower throwing and all other shenanigans went on. They all had a great time until their reports were to be handed out, together with their TER scores. They all failed, and shock horror, it stood. If they wanted to repeat year 12, they all had to sign contracts. No fish and chips for lunchtime, and they had to get passes to go home for lunch. They nearly all went back to finish their year 12, but the lunch passes came in handy as they all went to each other's homes for lunch. I still believe they failed due to that muck-up day. After Joanne left school, she didn't know what she wanted to do, and in the meantime, she got a position with Valentine's greeting cards. She was there for quite a while, and they were quite upset when she left and decided to join the police force. They really wanted her to stay on with them. I'm jumping ahead now to her coming to live in Daylesford. I know that she loved the place. Who wouldn't? It's one of the most beautiful places in Victoria, hence this celebration of her life being held here. Thanks to you all for accepting Joanne into your lives, befriending and loving her, not only in Melbourne, but also in Daylesford. As with any parent in my shop, I'm obviously devastated that Joanne is never going to be with the family ever, and the people who loved her dearly. We will miss her always. I'll leave it to others to carry on from here, to speak of her time in beautiful Daylesford. My lovely daughter Joanne is now safe in the arms of her loving dad forever, and may God bless them both. Thank you all for listening. Maureen, her mum.
Neil from the bowling club.
Hi everyone. First I'd like to thank Lee and families for the opportunity given to the bowling club to speak here today. How do you put into words the impact that Jo Best had on our club over the last 25 plus years, nearly half her life? I only knew Jo for a short time personally, but as one of the bowlers said to me when we were having a chat about Joanne today, You didn't need to know Jo long to realise what a beautiful person she was. On and off the greens, Jo was a superstar who arrived at our club in the 1990s. On the greens, Jo's achievements included the Ballarat District Singles Champion, was the club champion, and was a member of many of the premierships as part of the bowling club pennant and tournament teams. Jo was also a skipper or a captain in footy terms, who showed her leadership, and I know many of the bowlers who've spoken to me talk about that leadership and that care that we all know Jo for. But wait, there's more, not just a pretty face and a champion bowler. Such was Jo's nature and dedication to the club that off the greens, I don't know how she did it, she served as president for 4 years and secretary for 7 years, separate terms. So there's at least 11 years, and that doesn't include probably being a committee member as well. So yes, there was a serious side to Jo, and that was her dedication, her leadership, and being responsible, putting her hand up as part of the club. Off the greens, of course, where many of us know Jo, she was also the hostess with the mostess of our bistro operation in partnership with Lee. I posed earlier, how do you put into words Jo's time at our club? Well, it was in this role that Jo really shined. Caring, loving, loyal, fun, welcoming, engaging to all that came in contact with her. Whether it was cuddling a baby and goo-goo-garing or helping someone in need to get to their seat, having a chat, a laugh, a smile, that beautiful smile, and of course, a dance when the opportunity arose. Jo gave her all to everyone and made each visit to the club special. She welcomed all. In summary, with Jo's hospitality, I mentioned to Lee the other day, the old chestnut, you look up the word in the dictionary and there's a picture of Jo, and that really sums her up. Jo's impact on our club was enormous and won't be forgotten in the many memories and stories that are shared, be it today or in the years ahead. If you're coming back to the club today or in the future at some stage, you'll see photos of Jo and her name etched in honour boards, whether it was for her service off the greens or her achievements on. Her impact will indeed be at the club forever. Such was the impact and love for Jo. I'm sure Lee joins me in recognising the effort made by many of our members in preparation for today. Put simply, Jo was simply the best. Thank you.
Donna.
Hi, my name's Donna. I'd like to share a few stories about my best friend, Jo. Joanne Ruby Best, Jo, became my best friend in Year 5. We were 9 years old when my family moved to Springvale South. I lived in Sharon Road and Jo lived around the corner in Mark Court, Noble Park. I've been trying to recall how we became friends, but I can't. It just happened. Year 5 at Heather Hill Primary School was the best year of my schooling. I made new friends, and of course, one of them became my life friend. It would come to no surprise to those of you who knew her well that we weren't the perfect students. In fact, we were so naughty that our poor old religious instructor teacher, Mr. Dwyer, refused to teach our class. It may have something to do with us rearranging the little fuzzy felt animals and Jesus's disciples and placing them in terribly sexual acts. During primary school, Jo loved her sport. She excelled at everything she played and was always chosen for the A teams. I, however, wasn't that great and was only picked for the B teams. We continued our naughty ways onto high school at Heather Hill High. Every morning before school, I would walk to Jo's house, through a paddock, dodging a horse and jumping over her back fence. We would then walk to school together. After Form 1, the teachers split us up. We only shared a few classes, but we always met up at lunchtime. We had lunch passes, and every day we would walk to my house. We ate runny boiled eggs with toast soldiers every day. We also had a small glass of my mum's blackberry nip, masala, or whatever she had on her liquor shelf. Once the bottle was running low, we would top it up with water and head back to school. My mum worked at Benson and Hedges cigarette factory and had a never-ending supply of cigarettes on her dressing table. Jo and I would practice to smoke in our outside toilet. I think that was one thing I actually did better than her. We continued to get into trouble at high school. We both received an F grade for fabric, and we even made poor old Mrs. Meadows cry. We turned on the overhead sprinklers when our nature of the balance class and teacher were inside the greenhouse. We were at the door, so ran out to avoid getting soaked. It was during this class that we also stole plants to give to our mums. I remember we had our locker searched looking for the plants. Jo and I were involved in a wooden chair getting held in the air and smashing through a large window in one of our classrooms. Pretty sure my mum never found out about this, but Jo's mum, Annie Maureen, was phoned by the school. I spent most weekends at Jo's house and loved having sleepovers. Annie Maureen would have parties and we would dance and stay up late. Sometimes Annie Maureen would take us in her white Tirana to grab a late night pizza. Jo had CB radios. We would chat to random boys and arrange to meet them in the park down the road. I took one of the radios home and so we would chat to each other. We loved going to the roller skating rink. We thought we were pretty cool. We'd wear our corduroy overalls, usually with only one button done up at the front. From what I remember, we weren't that great at skating. We just loved the music and the atmosphere. On the 4th of December 1978, our worlds turned upside down. My parents split and I moved to Perth, Western Australia. We were both devastated. I asked Annie Maureen if she would adopt me so I could stay with Jo. I really believed that she would, however, this did not happen. Our favourite song was Baby It's You by The Promises. We went halves in the record before I left and that became known as our song. We spent the next 5 years speaking on the phone, and in 1984, Jo came over to the West to be my bridesmaid. Jo and my husband, Murray, became best friends too. He adored her and is saddened that he can't be here today to say goodbye. Murray had to endure many late nights, early morning phone calls from Jo. She would play our song at the start of the call, and once the song had finished, then we would talk for hours. Whenever we visited each other, we would stay up to the early hours of the morning, dancing, singing, laughing, crying, of course drinking. We were ordered to bed at 10 a.m. after my 40th birthday by my husband. We had been partying for near on 10 days. My neighbours still remind me of this nearly 18 years later. Jo became a regular visitor to WA and was an adored Auntie Jo to our 3 children. Jo came over after every one of my births to help us out and of course to love our children. Jo enjoyed heading down to our local beach with a bottle of bubbles to watch the sunset and of course the dolphins swim by. Jo loved WA, although not the Rottnest Island ferry trip. She became extremely seasick and spent a few days in the nurse's post and then had to fly back to the mainland. She didn't see any brought home. In 2011, Murray and I moved to Elwood, then Port Melbourne. We spent 2 years in Melbourne and we were so grateful to have spent time catching up with Jo and Lee, Jo's family and friends. Our children, Kyle, Jade and Sai, adored Jo and also saddened that they can't be here today. Jo never got to meet my granddaughter Florence, however, she enjoyed the photos I sent her. Sometimes we never meet a true friend who knows everything about you, never judges, and is always there for you no matter what. Though we must part ways today, I can find solace in knowing that Jo's spirit will continue to guide and inspire us. She'll be with us in the laughter we share, the tears we shed, and the challenges we overcome. I'd like to close with a definition of what I think a bestie is. A bestie is an irreplaceable person who means the world to you, someone who is by your side throughout all of life's ups and downs, no matter their own troubles. A person that accepts your weirdness and loves you unconditionally. Someone who laughs with you and cries with you. The best thing you can have and the best thing you can be. Rest in peace, Joanne Ruby Best.
Chris and Kelly are now going to come up.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
I know. Okay. So when Lee asked if we would say a few words today, we were honoured, but also terrified. No one likes public speaking. So I asked Chris for some advice on how to get through this, and he said, just picture everyone naked. So I'm really sorry to have to do this to you all, but I'm going to give that a go. Okay, so just. Thanks. Lee, Jo, Katie, Chris, Kane and I are all neighbours. We call ourselves the Golden Triangle because our houses are literally in a triangle to each other. Sorry about that. And from Lee and Jo's laundry, Jo could see all. Lee, if you're wondering, the laundry is that room where Jo would take the dirty clothes into and come out with clean clothes. When Kane and I were looking for a block of land to build a house, Jo rang me and said, Kelly, the real estate agent has just put the for sale sign up on the block across the road. And within an hour, we'd bought it. On settlement day, Jo and I took deck chairs and a bottle of wine over to the block to celebrate. After a while, Lee got home, Kane arrived, Chris came over to introduce himself. I think even Jess and Luda came over, and that was the start of our beautiful friendship.
Jo loved to entertain. We celebrated so many birthdays, Christmas parties, parties for no reason parties. There was a time that I swear all the neighbours thought Jo and Lee had a party every weekend, but it was actually just the two of them enjoying their music, their own dance party. There was never, ever a need for an invitation to go to Jo and Lee's house. You just had to hear the music and the door was open. I remember all the nights sitting around the fire listening to the music. Jo and I were often the last ones standing. Very similar story I'm getting. So very early in the morning, we'd be listening to Metallica, AC/DC. I even got her to listen to Iron Maiden. We just had it up loud enough so all our neighbours could hear it as well. If any of those neighbours are here, we apologise. One of the benefits of living so close to each other throughout these late nights and early mornings, if someone needed to get home, we had a wheelbarrow. And certain people, Lee, took advantage of this.
Jo was always up for a laugh and a dance. One night at Lee and Jo's house, The girls were in possession of Michael Peters' beloved Melbourne Demons scarf. The girls thought it would be hilarious if they sent Michael a photo, I think you were overseas at the time, of Kane wearing that scarf naked. The scarf was carefully positioned to hide Kane's dignity. Michael, I don't know if you've still got possession of that photo. You have the scarf. Yeah.
Jo loved her family. She treated everyone like family. During the school holidays, Darcy, Shay, and sometimes Ashton would stay with Jo and Lee. Then our kids, Chloe, Declan, and Saska, would live over there. Jo loved having the house full of kids. She would organise activities, cooking, pool parties. Our children loved Auntie Joey. She was fun, she was cool, she was everything us boring parents weren't.
When Lee told us that she was going to propose to Jo, we were absolutely thrilled. Lee organised for Kane and I to go pick up 24 red roses and leave them at the front door when she sent the message to do so. Then we raced back to it and we stood on our deck and we waited to hear Bruno Mars's "I Think I Want to Marry You." And that's when we knew that Lee was proposing. And their wedding day will go down in history as being the best wedding reception / after party, I think 3 days, 5 days ever, and some of us are still recovering.
I'd like to know how Sherelle survived it, actually. Look, Jo touched a lot of lives, and looking around the room, that is very obvious. Every time you met someone in our close circle of friends, bang, they were your friends, like you'd known them forever. We loved your ability to light up a room, the positive effect you had on all the people you ever encountered, whether you knew them or not. You had such a loving nature. We personally are very grateful for you taking Chloe under your wing during the time at the Bowling Club Bistro, and this will be something Chloe will never forget.
Jo, we will always love you and we will miss you. We will look after Lee and we will dance with Lee. And don't worry, we will also show her where the clothesline is. We love you, Jo.
So Lily is going to come up and talk on Lee's behalf.
Hello, I'm very nervous.
We all are.
Following on from Kelly, it's true about the laundry. Jo always did the washing. I only recently learned that there was a spin speed dial on our machine. So over the course of the last week, having family come and stay, there was much washing and linen and towels to do. When I took them out of the washing machine, I discovered that we now have a range of what looks like tie-dyed bed linen and towels. I can only hear Joey saying, "Oh, Dal, what have you done?" It was inevitable that mine and Jo's paths would cross. In the early 70s, we lived a few streets away from each other in Noble Park. In the 80s, we both attended the same Kiss concert at Waverley Park, the same Bruce Springsteen concert at the Melbourne Showgrounds, and the same Bon Jovi concert at the Sports and Entertainment Centre before we finally met at the Bowling Club in 2007. Our friendship grew and eventually developed into a relationship that has been for 14 years. We were married for 4 of these. Jo and I shared a love of football, holidays, friends and family, and work. Jo and I were the A-team. We worked side by side for 9 years, 24/7. Most of that was at the Daylesford Bowling Club, where Jo was the ultimate front of house. She knew everyone's names and greeted everyone like they were family. The bowling club was a huge part of our relationship, and there was more than one occasion some shenanigans may have occurred. I won't say too much as there are quite a few bowlers here today. We were fortunate enough to go on several holidays overseas and within Australia. We enjoyed travel, sometimes with family, sometimes on our own. Jo's favourite holiday was Darwin, even though I got us cut off from cocktails one night by cheering too loudly for the Pies. Speaking of football, Jo loved her Blue Baggers, but her heart was big enough to embrace my team, Collingwood. She would often call me her precious pie. Last year, when the Pies versed the Blues, both of us ended up watching the last quarter in different rooms. We both ended up in tears, one happy and one sad. Go Pies. Jo, as you could imagine, was always more gracious in defeat than I was. Our families just gelled. Both sides always got along with each other. Ray and Trina, Sherelle and Steve were a major part of our wedding, forming the I Do crew. Jo and I wanted them to be a part of every aspect of our wedding, so we rented a Hummer to transport all of us to the Kirks Reservoir for our wedding. When 12 people emerged from the Hummer, a passerby commented saying, "That must be one of those blended families." That was one of the best days of our lives, and I'll remember that forever. I want to thank the Golden Triangle. I always refer to Chris as my house husband, aka domestic god. And Katie, I hope I can now refer to you as my housewife. Kane and Kelly, I've known you for 20 years and cherished our friendship. You are more than just friends to us. You are extended family. Thank you.
So just in case you weren't aware of that, that was actually Lee speaking. She thought she might be able to get up and just say a few words, something personal. No, not going to put her on the spot. Sherelle.
Just a little bow. Okay, I'm Jo's sister, Sherelle. Joanne Ruby Best, aka Jo, sister, or my favourite sister, Bob. There was 12 years difference between Jo and I, and from a very young age, I always looked up to her. Jo was the best. It wasn't just in the name, but in the person she was, and everyone who met her adored her. Growing up, 12 years younger, Jo loved to torment me. She loved getting her mates involved as well. And yes, I did believe one of her friends was Jesus. And yes, I also believed one of her friends was Humphrey B. Bear. I believed Jo when she said she would help me pull my wobbly tooth out. Jo tied the string around my tooth and the other end to the kitchen door. I'm pretty sure that's when my phobia of the dentist started. Some of our best years together was when Jo moved to Daylesford. I would spend all my annual leave and weekends heading up there, sometimes on my own and sometimes with girlfriends. We'd always start at Dungy's pub or the bowling club and always finishing with dancing on the tables with the fruit bowl on our heads or my head. It was always a fun time. The first time I came to Daylesford, I did try to wrestle her, and that was the first and last time. Needless to say, I came out second best. When I met Steve, our family grew. Jo loved her nephews and her niece, and there was always tears when we had to go home. Jo had a very special connection with Steve and gave him his DJ name, Stereo Steve. The night of my 30th birthday, I was heavily pregnant with Darcy. At 2 a.m, Steve and Jo were still partying in Steve's studio. I told them to keep it down, and Jo just replied, "Sherelle, I love this song." Jo loved her animals, her Great Danes, the lovebirds, Baxter and Ollie, and even the cows. When I met the cow's name was Steak. I said, that's such an awful name. Joe replied, well, we are going to eat it. I was mortified and said, well, if I'm out here feeding and patting the thing, don't be serving up any steak to me. She assured me that she wouldn't. 12 months later, on a weekend visit, Jo cooked a beautiful meal. She said it wasn't steak, but I could tell by the grin she got me. I was always proud of her, whether it was her sporting achievements or watching her in her element as front of house. Jo always had a way of making everyone feel a sense of belonging. We have loved being a part of Jo and Lee's life and meeting all their wonderful families and friends, connections that I know will continue on. I'm not sure how I'm going to go on without you. You're my sister, my best friend, my partner in crime. I love you dearly, and I know your beautiful dad will be taking good care of you. You were the best sister I could have ever wished for, and the best auntie our children could have wished for. You may be gone, but you will always be forever in our hearts. That's it.
Now, Auntie Annie. And I was told we all have to call her Auntie Annie, so back at the bowling club later. No, no.
Hi everybody, I'm Jojo's. Sorry. I've just got a poem here I'd like to read. It's called Nothing is Lost. I came across this last week. Sorry. Nothing you love is lost, not really. Things, people, they always go away, sooner or later. You can't hold them any more than you can hold moonlight. But if they've touched you, if they're inside of you, then they're still yours. The only things you ever really have are the ones you hold inside your heart. Thanks, everybody.
So now we're going to have a short reflection and we're going to watch some photos that Lee has put together. And the music is Crazy in Love by Beyonce, which was one of their wedding songs.
History in the making, part 2. So crazy right now.
I look and stare so deep in your eyes. I touch on you more and more every time. When you leave, I'm begging you not to go. Call your name 2-3 times in a row. Such a funny thing for me to try to explain. How I'm feeling and my pride is the one to blame. Yeah. Cause I know I don't understand just how your love can do it, no one else can. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your love got me looking so crazy right now. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your touch got me looking so crazy right now. Got me hoping you page me right now. Your kiss got me hoping you save me right now. Looking so crazy, your love got me looking so crazy, your love. When I talk to my friends so quietly, who we think he is? Look at what you did to me. Tennis shoes don't even need to buy a new dress. If you ain't there, ain't nobody else to impress. The way that you know what I thought I knew. It's the beat in my heart just when I'm with you. But I still don't understand just how you look and do it, no one else can. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your love got me looking so crazy right now. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your touch got me looking so crazy right now. Got me hoping you page me right
know when the flow is loco. Young B and the ROC. OG, big homie, the one and only. Stick bony, but the pockets are fat like Tony. Soprano, the rock handle like Ben X2. I shake bonies, man, you can't get next to. The genuine article, I do not sing though. I sling though, if anything, I bling yo. Star like Ringo, war like a Greensboro wreck. Crazy, bring your whole set. Jay-Z in the range, crazy in the range. They can't figure him out, they like, hey, is he insane? Yes, sir, I'm cut from a different cloth. My texture is the best firm chinchilla. I've been dealing with chain smokers. How you think I got the name over? I've been realer, the game's over. Fall back young, ever since I made the change over the platinum, the game's been a rap one.
Got me looking so crazy, my baby. I'm not myself lately. I'm foolish, I don't do this. I've been playing myself, baby. I don't care, 'cause your love's not the best of me, and baby you're making a fool of me. You got me strong and I don't care who sees, 'cause baby you got me, you got me, you got me so crazy, baby. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your love's got me looking so crazy right now. You're crazy, got me looking so crazy right now. Your touch got me looking so crazy right now. Got me hoping you save me right now. You just got me hoping you save me right now. Looking so crazy, your love's got me looking so crazy, your love. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your love's got me looking so crazy right now. Got me looking so crazy right now. Your touch got me looking so crazy right now. Got me hoping you save me right now. Your kiss got me hoping you save me right now. Looking so crazy, your love's got me looking so crazy, your love.
I'm just going to remind you all that Lee would love it if you came back to the bowling club in Daylesford. We are going to cortege the hearse past there. She's got lots of other photos there that she wants you to see and some refreshments. The one consequence of death is it can make you appreciate life. It is so precious and it is so fragile. It should not be taken for granted. The journey changes you. It should change you. It leaves a mark on your memory, on your consciousness, on your body, and on your heart. It isn't always pretty, and it isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts, and at times like this, it really breaks your heart. And it seems so unfair in so many ways. It will start to heal in time, but it will leave a scar that can never truly be erased. But don't let your emotions stop you from seeing how beautiful and how precious each moment is of your life right now. And each day, do at least one thing, whatever it is that makes you smile. Do a little of that every day. Like Joe, maybe it's dancing around the living room or dancing around the kitchen. Go on loving with all your heart and go on living as Joe would want you to. So now, this kind of gets to the end of our service. Joe's to be cremated on Monday. But now we're going to say our final goodbye. Death has cheated you of one more conversation with Joe, or that Friday fun of dancing around the room, or to be able to give her that big hug and just say, everything is going to be okay. The next words that I'm going to read to you are for the poet Khalil Gibran. And I'd like to think maybe this is how Joe may have looked upon death. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides? And only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth claims your limbs, then you shall truly dance. Lee has requested that the beautiful bouquets that adorn the coffin be given out to the following people. If you'd like to come forward, Lily first. Then there's Auntie Annie. Donna. Darcy. Kelly. And Katie. So now, in the quietness of this moment, with love and with sadness, we commit Joanne Ruby Best to eternal rest. And to Jo we say, you must travel this journey alone. May you find peace and serenity in your eternal resting place, free from shadow and pain. Earth to earth, dust to dust, and ashes to ashes. Thank you for being on this grand adventure we call life. And even though the journey was not as long as we hoped for, it has been a fun ride. We will miss you deeply and irreplaceably. Farewell, Jo. All our love goes with you. Go in peace.
For you, there'll be no more crying. For you, the sun will be shining, and I feel that when it's alright, I know it's right. To you, I will give you. To you, I most of all, I wish it from myself. And the songbirds keep singing like they know the score. And I love you, I love you, I love you like never before. Like never before. Like never before.